Hi everyone, and I decided to do a little off-the-cuff video of showing how I rank each of the seasons, because when I did the top 10s, I only picked 10 seasons and I really never said like how do I feel for certain ones, so I thought I would just use the tier lister. What I really always enjoyed, I think my favorite season will always be Lightspeed Rescue. The reason why I like Lightspeed Rescue so much, it was the first season that said, you know what? We don't care about secret identities. Everyone will know them. They're a service for the planet. They're a service that people will know who they are. And it had, it took a very different type of direction from the original Go-Go 5 series. Not to mention we had the Titanium Ranger, which was overall really great. I did like Captain Mitchell. He's one of the mentors that got used very well. We also had Dana as a sister, which involved her in many more type of stories. And overall, I liked Joel with Miss Fairweather. That could have gone somewhere if we had gotten a season 2. I had, Time Force was really high, but over the years, I found Lightspeed Rescue was the one that I loved the most. Now with all 25 seasons out, a lot of seasons have also dropped or raised. Like originally before the Saban seasons and even the Disney seasons, I would have lowered Turbo to trash, honestly, because that was the first time we had really a really poor season, and I really didn't like almost anything from the season until they had switched over to Passing of the Torch. But this time I'm putting it in a meh season, because even though I really don't like Elgar, I have no problem with Divatox, Porto, Rygog, a lot of the main generals. I really hated the first half. That's not forgivable, but the second half does improve. I do love all the new actors. Justin didn't really get improved. They still had a lot of issues. When we were almost finished with the season, I started liking him, which I wish they had done a little bit more that helped him and didn't make him feel just like Billy Light. So Turbo's moved up to meh. Now Power Rangers in Space. Power Rangers in Space is beloved by a lot of people. A lot of people will easily put it in awesome. But for me, because it had come after Turbo, and that was when I actually stopped watching the show for an entire year and some change. I didn't come back until my sister basically said, no, Lost Galaxy's way better, way better. Just forget about Turbo screwing up. It's better. Watch it. Space, even though a lot of people would put it in awesome, I'm going to put it in good. It is a very good season. I'm not saying no. It has a lot of great moments. The finale is really good. But certain things, I didn't really particularly care for. One, episodes with, Ernie had disappeared, so that kind of threw me off. The Psycho Rangers arc is good, but it's not perfect because there were some episodes where it was dumb. So I factor in all these weird issues. The Craterite invasion was interesting, but they didn't really go into, a different direction. It's like they had the sci-fi elements, the Star Trek elements to In Space, but they just, I wish they had gone a little bit further. But the ending of the show is very well, and Zordon's death is always a personal thing that everyone enjoyed and felt sorry for. Now, I'm also going to be rating each of the seasons, even though, normally I put them together, like Dino Charge, Dino Supercharge should technically be together. But since they're separate seasons, I'm going to be rating them separately, especially what they did in Dino Supercharge. Dino Charge, I will be putting in good. It was the first time when we got in a decent season, which had, used all the characters, they had arcs. Kendall at the last minute became the new Ranger, and it was okay because, this is season 1. Okay, Keeper wasn't expanded on in the first season. I was like, oh, we have another season. We can explore his direction. All the main characters are really well. I enjoyed Riley particularly, and unfortunately, season 2, he didn't really turn out so well. And the first season also had started off on all the extra characters, like Prince Philip and Ivan. All of them are used very well, and they're set up in this season. So when they came into season 2, it's like, okay, we have new characters that we can explore. So now it leads up to Dino Supercharge. Because of the lack of consistency with the characters, introducing people like Xenowing at the last minute and really not doing anything with him, and because of the god-awful season finale, which screws a lot of things up, I will be putting it in a meh position. It's not trash. I will not say it. The finale is trash, but the overall season as it was is a meh because, Yeah, they use Coda as a filler episode, which I do like Coda. It's not like he's bad or anything, but because they used those filler episodes to just do fun stories, they didn't really go into any details with the characters that they had to introduce or set up. And Heckle, unfortunately, was wasted. His alter ego, his backstory, it's just like you could have done a lot more with him if you just didn't do any of those filler stories. Now, Jungle Fury is in the same boat as Turbo. I originally would have marked it as trash because, again, I really didn't care for the season because of Jared and Camille and Casey, but I do say Casey had improved near the end of the season. It's just his initial whining and how he just didn't want to listen to anyone. It just felt very childish and immature. While that's what they were going for, but it's a really hard balance to do that with a person who's an adult, and it doesn't feel foolish. And again, they were dealing with the Geki Ranger footage with Jan being goofy, but for the most part, they cut that out. And, you know, it took a long time until I finally said, okay, Casey's getting better, and I actually do enjoy him. But it happened at the end. But I'm going to give this season a meh. I do like a lot of things from it, but I do hate a lot of things. RJ's great. His arc was fairly fine. I mean, they could have done a little bit more because there's sometimes he's just gone for no reason, and they don't give an explanation because of Japanese footage. His father's backstory with him, like, they could have done more with that one. I would have liked to have seen that. And the whole Master Mao and the animal suits they decided to use at the last minute, I thought was like, you shouldn't have bothered. If you were never going to use the suits in any, like, big way, don't do it. The Spirit Rangers were actually a really cool addition, which I had also wished they had done more often, especially like in seasons that had other dinosaurs or other animals that you could have used to become a ranger. I always liked those type of things, which unfortunately RPM didn't do that either, and they just had them as figurines. Now, you'll be surprised. Megaforce, which I don't really like either, I'm going to put it in meh. Because even though I had a lot of issues with Megaforce, Robo Knight was my favorite character from it, which a few others like Jake and Noah, and of course the Yellow Ranger. I did like them. I didn't like how their stories progressed, but there was an interest into the season because, again, okay, we brought back elements from Zordon. We had Gosei, Tensu, referencing Zordon, Alpha 5. I liked that, and I had hoped it would have improved, but over time, the season had kept getting worse. Troy kept getting ignored, his dream, all the stuff, Mr. Burley, that. But I will not say it's a completely garbage season. Unfortunately, I can't say that for Super Megaforce because of what it was supposed to be. A 20th anniversary and an honor to all the seasons and all the suits that came before. I cannot say it's a mess season. It's a very poor season, so it's going to be put in trash. You wasted time introducing suits that do not exist in PR, that did not need to be used at all. You could have cut them out and replaced them with Lightspeed Rescue episode because those suits were never used. You changed the episode with the mmpr suits and you just changed it to Lost Galaxy for some unknown reason. Troy got dropped. Robo Knight's payoff was interesting, but then he dies. You rescue the 6th Ranger, and then he comes back during the Legendary Battle. And speaking of the Legendary Battle, while it was cool to see all the people come back, especially even the extended edition, which gave them a couple of more lines with Astronema and a few other things, fighting minions for a 20th anniversary sucked. It had to be an original US ending for us, because what they had to do was they had to use the footage from the movie. That was only the beginning portions of it so they could save money, but that doesn't work because it was just X-Borgs, the minions. It would be like if, 20 Rangers came back and all they did was fight putties. That's all it was. The main villain was never fought. No past villain came back to fill it in. Nothing. Like, there was no Ranger that turned evil. Things like that. So when it became to a 20th anniversary special, it was very bad. I would consider it the worst anniversary episode out of all of them. Now, here's a tough one. Ninja Steel and Super Ninja Steel. Do I consider Ninja Steel complete trash or Super Ninja Steel as complete trash and have Ninja Steel as meh? That's really hard to call because there are a lot of things I do like. I don't have a problem with Kelson Henderson's character. The actors are fine, but I'm going to actually put Ninja Steel and Super Ninja Steel, even though we had a decent anniversary episode for Super Ninja Steel, all the characters had potential. It's like I don't go out to hate on characters. That's foolish. But when you set up someone like the Sixth Ranger, where he's this rich, millionaire, everyone loves his work, that the mystery between them being Brody and them being brothers, that was interesting, and it was a decent payoff for that part. But when you have him go to high school, and he's like, I'm going to high school, and then no one cares about him, and then a lot of times where this money can come in handy, and it doesn't, that's what makes the season overall suck, and it kept getting worse, especially when their father finally came back. It came out of the prison, and he's like, I'm back, thank you, and goodbye, and he never comes into the show until the end. And of course, when Mick came and became the other Red Ranger, oh, that's cool, but because that was footage from the finale of Ninja, there was nothing else to explore unless they were going to film a new material, which they didn't do. Mick got wasted. Sarah kept getting very odd episodes where, Power Rangers is a kid show, you're supposed to teach them lessons and this and that. That's perfectly fine. But when you do it when it's on the nose, where they're blatantly saying this, and other times where it's like, you should actually be, be fun with them, and then one character says no, it's like, doesn't he have the right to not, be with them playing a board game, for example? So a lot of these inconsistencies of like, you're writing too simplistic of a story, or things get wrapped up too fast. Now, Power Rangers Samurai, which brought back this franchise from death, basically, I'm going to put it in the trash. Shinkenger, I really enjoyed Shinkenger, and I'm not really basing it off just because I like Shinkenger. There was a lot of things they could have done, even though it's a Japanese-centric show, that wanted to learn from Japanese culture. We had a Japanese-American person who was for the Shiba clan, and it's just, okay, this is fine, but they didn't explain how this worked. Characters really didn't go anywhere. They were copying the Shinkenger episodes, but when the episode actually had too much Japanese-centric stuff in it, they cut it out without filling anything in, so the episode fell on its pants. Like, for example, I'm going to always bring up Blue Ranger episode when he's fishing for the Zord. We have this fisherman come in, which is basically a copy of the Shinkenger episode. He had no purpose, and it's okay to see these abilities, see Kevin, and it's just like, this makes no sense. When if they had thought ahead, okay, we're gonna have the Sixth Ranger be who likes fish, but we don't bring him in. So this is where forward thinking and all the footage, what they decided on, they just don't think of these things. So unfortunately, Samurai really didn't work and hit its stride, and it also didn't help that the pilot was skipped, so it aired last, and then it confused a lot of people, and realistically, the only character I really did like was Mike. Now, Power Rangers Ninja Storm, you think I would say it's an awesome season. No, even though I really like it, and Cam is my favorite Ranger, this is only going to be a good season. It does have some flaws. The issue is mainly with the comedy. I like most of the comedy. Lothar I really have no problem with. Zergain, Chubo, I really don't have a problem with. Vexicus, he has little issues here and there with comedy, but overall he's fine. It's Mara and Capri. And it's unfortunate. The original characters in the Hurricane season, they do the same thing. They're not total dimwits. They're competent. They're funny. They're interesting. Mara and Capri try to be like them, but because they couldn't use any of the footage, and most of the jokes they do in Hurricane cannot be used either, they couldn't do it, so we had all these, jokes and funny things which are trying to be funny, especially when, like recently in Shane's Karma, I've discussed that we had this thing, and it's just like this party, and they're just looking stupid, and they're filling in time. It didn't really work. But I do really love all the main characters. Cam, Blake, Shane, Dustin. Hunter, unfortunately, didn't get anything to do because in the Hurricane episode, the characters is similar. I'm not going to say they're the same. But because they couldn't do a lot of the story elements and they didn't want to write anything original for Hunter, he got nothing to do, so he kept getting thrown on the wayside. And unfortunately, because he gets ignored, I don't really care about him. Blake got more stuff to do. The ending of the season is what I love the most. Even though Lothar screwed up, he took advantage of all the stuff that he knew that would happen from the future once he realized it, and they used that paradox element for him to, just in case if I screw up, or if I want to get back at my brother by stealing the amulet of my nephew, that was a really great plan. And I really love the season finale because of those reasons, and because it's haunted even until Dino Thunder. The characters comes back, and Mesogog steals him, and he's still technically alive. We never saw him get killed on screen, so I always say Lothor's alive. That's why I really like Ninja Storm, but it's not perfect. It still has some flaws. Now, Dino Thunder is another really great season, but do I count it as an awesome season or a good season? It's kind of hard to pick on that because I like all the characters are great. Tommy coming back was great because they really redeemed him with me, because I really did not like Tommy when he left the show. Turbo, he was atrocious. They screwed up his character. Zio was okay. There were some issues, but I started liking him again. But can I rank it as an awesome, or can I rank it as just a good? Because I do like Trent's arc. They handled the evil White Ranger very well, especially when it's a completely different story compared to what they did in Abba Ranger, because the character was like, I'm just being evil because I thought it would be funny and also be interesting that I wanted to toy with you, while Trent was just, being controlled by this evil force, and then they had a clone to deal with. So the problem, the reason why I don't want to put it in awesome is because of the Smitty Tommy, story arc. So I'm going to end up putting it in good because mainly that. And then the ending of Mesogog, it was kind of a cop-out, which I really didn't like. But because of mainly Smitty and Tommy's backstory, which really didn't go anywhere except for the, basically a surface layer rivalry. I hated Tommy because he was going to work with Anton Mercer, and I thought I was better, and then he screwed up and got blown up, and the Mesogog saved him at the last minute, and he blames Tommy, and it's just like, that's not his mistake, it was yours. There was no real connection because we don't see Tommy. We didn't know what happened between Turbo and Dino Thunder, so that backstory was never explored. So Smitty is just a character that's just basically there, which is unfortunate because the Abba Ranger story with Asuka and that character in the Abba Ranger season was more fleshed out, and it has an actual importance to his character. So because of that, and the Mesogog finale, because I thought it was very cheap, Mesogog was like, oh, I'll figure out how to split myself up, and he finally does it. And then, Anton Mercer was, freed, and that was basically it. And then Mesogog became a generic final baddie of the day, and they just blow him up in a very similar fashion how Ninja Storm ended. Because what I would have loved to have seen is that Mesogog and Mercer were fused permanently because they did something. So instead of separating it, it backfired and it fused together. And their powers, when they drained their powers, is what separated them and saving his life. That would have been more poignant, especially against Trent, because he would have to fight his father, and he would be like, am I willing to kill my father to save the planet or not? So they would have that dynamic. They didn't do that dynamic, so the ending just felt lackluster. Now, Power Rangers Wild Force. Yeah, like I said, just like Turbo, just like Jungle Fury, this would have been in a trash season, but because there's a lot of seasons that are worse, I really believe it's in a meh season. Like I said, I liked the Master Org arc, the Zanaku arc, especially the Zanaku arc. I wish they just had explored it more, used more of the elements from the Gal Ranger season, which is ironic because the reason why Wild Force doesn't really work so well is because they use so much of the Gal Ranger material. It's just Gal Ranger, when I watched it, they really could have just continued on with the story of that and then extrapolated something new, like maybe make Zanaku a power-up like I had suggested in other videos. It was just the main Rangers, Danny, Max especially, he really did not get anything to do. And again, that's also Gal Ranger's fault because they were sticking so close to the Japanese material. Alyssa, I liked her character, I really did, but again, stuck so close to the Gal Ranger footage, she didn't get much to do. Taylor was the most fleshed out, and Merrick and the whole thing with Princess Shayla, it didn't really do much. It was more tossed around in the Gal Ranger season, which I thought was better. But either season, I didn't like the whole deer episode. The season finale for Wild Force was really good. I mean, there's some issues where the animals blow up and they die and they come back out of nowhere, and that happened in the Gal Ranger footage too. But overall, I did like it because it's the way it was written. It was the end of the Power Rangers. They weren't sure they were going to get renewed or not. It could have been the end of it, and that would have been it. So we got this night stuff, raining. The key problems with main characters, a wasted opportunity with Zanaku, Max and Danny. Danny too, because he had an arc. And once they copied the arc from Gal Ranger and completed the arc with his semi-girlfriend, then I explored that. They just drop it, forgotten, that's it. And they don't ever bring it up. It's like, they could have done something with that. Maybe she finds out who he really is. and she's in danger, and then they use her again, like she's like a pawn. Master Org maybe takes her over and tries to infiltrate the base. Like, there's so many different things they could have done with her without just simply tossing her away. Ah, yes, Operation Overdrive. This, I would like to use excuses to say it's meh, but I'm going to put it in the trash bin. This season really failed in a lot of ways with me. And you're talking to someone who likes Dax, and most people don't. I could totally understand why people don't like Dax. I do. I wish he was, you know, a little bit more better. It was him being funny in inappropriate places, and they were trying to copy what Boken Blue was like in a similar fashion. I did like his arc with Mirror Tricks because they did do that in Bokendra, and I was like, oh, you could do something and then explore it in a different way because Dax is different. And they just kind of dropped it after the first time, and that was it. Although I'm glad they didn't adapt that whole cat episode. Thank God they didn't go there. And Mac, I liked the twist with Mac being a robot. I thought that was interesting. The problem is just devolved into, I'm a robot, you didn't tell me, I am mad, and then that's literally it. I mean, Mr. Hartford doesn't really explain it to him so well, really redeem it until super late. Then Mac is also used as the clip show way to, you know, like, oh, we forgot where in each of the Corona Aurora parts were. Like, oh, we need to know what happened. That's like, this doesn't make any sense. Will constantly quitting, that didn't go anywhere, which I hated. That wasn't even in the Bokendra season. I mean, Boken Black and Red had rivalries and they didn't argue, but he didn't quit like that. At the end of the season, he was going to turn evil, so we had that final arc which paid off that whole tension between the two characters throughout the whole year. Will didn't have that with Mac, and there was no real close friendship that they bonded together. So again, Will didn't have much to do. Then you had Ronnie get absolutely nothing to do in the season. She's the most, I would say, the most useless character in all the PR seasons. She's completely different from her Japanese counterpart. They did not use any of the story elements. She was stuck as a battery in her own two-parter, and Will was focused on it. With Rose, again, I really had issues with her because she's trying to be the Billy of the season, which, okay, I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, and I did like her in key places. In the anniversary episode where she had little fun bits with Mac and everything, it's just, especially when she was first introduced, she's a snarky know-it-all character that's kind of pushing the scientists over and just like, oh, just do this and we're done. It's just like, does anyone really like that type of character who's like, oh, I'm a know-it-all? And the best episode she had was the Pirate in Pink because she actually learned her lesson. But even then, when she did learn her lesson to not be like that, she still technically was still like that. And they couldn't do any of the sort of stuff because it wouldn't make any sense. And then Mr. Hartford really didn't get anything to do. He's supposed to be the main mentor, and it ended up being his butler, and it's just like, he should have been the only one there and not Mr. Hartford, and he should have just been the main mentor, and he could have been the one. I screwed up, I made Mac because I just didn't have a son. It's just like, why not? That would have worked as well with him too, but because of all those issues, and then the anniversary episode, it was not good. I'm not gonna say, it's not, I don't hate it as much as other people, because I do like who they picked, because that was really great. But it wasn't the greatest with the whole, I have a son with Rita and Lord Zed, and it's like, that came out of nowhere. And overall, it just didn't really work as a good, because it just throws the Overdrive Rangers out of there. Mystic Force, unfortunately, is going to be joining Operation Overdrive. I really loved Maji Ranger. It had a really great family dynamic. It had Maji Mother, Wolves on Fire, characters that argued, but then they had a purpose. The magic elements, which I thought was going to be like the thing that kind of killed the show, but no. I enjoyed it. Mystic Force, you had decent characters. I liked them as their starting elements. They're all their core archetype elements. All of them are great. Vita, Madison, Nick, everything. But because of Nick being solely focused, because, oh, there was so much Red Ranger footage in the Maji Ranger season, we had to do this huge arc of stuff. And it's just like, no. I would say Kai is equal to Kenta in Mega Ranger. There was really no difference between the two characters. They're hugely focused because he's the youngest, and that was the reason when he's the Red Ranger, he has to learn, and everyone else is supporting him. Where was that support with the US cast in Mystic Force? There was hardly anything there. Very few times we see Xander support him. Then we have Daggeron being ignored, which I like Daggeron because he was also Doggy Kruger. He's a really good actor. They could have done a lot more with him because, you know, they had a lot of material from the Maji Ranger that they could have adapted, and they didn't. They decided to be like, you know what? No, we're just going to stick to this very simple thing. We only saw him one time in Civilian Clothes. We never saw him interact with people. We never had an awkward moment. Well, Maji Shine did very similar things. He was more personal. He had that marriage with Blue, and I'm like, I can't fault Udana being ignored because, again, there was no footage for her to use. I had wished they had used her more. Same thing with Claire. She served her purpose in the beginning as the Zelda character from Maji Ranger, basically, and it was fine. I just wish the two of them, because they didn't have any footage, I wish they had gotten a couple of, like, 4 episodes to, you know, talk about their backstory a little bit more that doesn't pertain to Nick. I would have liked to have known Liambo before any of this had happened, because we get explanations between the characters of he was a righteous man, he did all this great stuff. We don't see it. We don't see that a little bit of exploration, because it's like you could have hired Liambo earlier in the season, so we could have gotten used to him more. We could have worked out that mystery thing. You didn't have to copy the Maji Ranger mystery, like they kept his face hidden, we just hear him. They didn't have to go in that direction because of all these elements that were just ignored. Villains changing, which I really don't particularly like, but then the 10 Terrors were really messed up, and the Matumbo stuff comes out of nowhere. Vita has this thing. It's just, you drop so many cool things, especially the Yellow Ranger. I love Chip. I love his crazy antics. Now, Power Ranger Lost Galaxy, I'm surprised. A lot of people don't really care for this season, which, fine. You know, you can hate it. I don't really mind it, but I consider it one of the best seasons. Remember, I could be somewhat biased, because remember, I had quit the entire series from MMPR to Turbo. And when Turbo finally crossed that line where it's like, okay, you know what, you're going nowhere. Yeah, you're going to make another season. It's called Space, whoop-de-doo. And I regret it because, oh, of course, when I quit is when the seasons actually start becoming good. So when my sister said, oh, Lost Galaxy is really interesting, it went all over the place. It had a huge budget, you know, for PR standards. It was a huge budget. They did a lot of crazy stuff. It's completely different from the Japanese version, because even at that point, I had started watching Super Sentai at that point. Even in 1999, we were able to get VHS tapes. No one subtitled them at the time, but I was able to watch Gingaman. I was like, this is really different and odd. Gingaman's fine. It's an average season. Lost Galaxy goes, here, space theme that we should have done from in last year. We had no money to do it. Let's do it now. We have a space station. We have completely different cast. I was like, what? Zordon's got, but it's like, this can't work. And it did. Kendricks was great. Maya was interesting. She's this weird alien that they come out of nowhere. They have this beginning training thing where they're testing out this armor from Starship Troopers. We have Mike die in the beginning. I was like, they killed a ranger off, a potential ranger off. Okay, Leo being annoyed with Mike is dead and constantly being obsessed with it. Fine, yes, that's it was annoying after a while. You had Scorpius, Trakina, original villains, especially when we go to Captain Mutiny. It's like, oh, when I first saw Lost Galaxy, I was like, Captain Mutiny must be the original boss in the Japanese footage. And lo and behold, when I finally went to see it again, I was like, yep, he was. I knew it. When you see the Swabbies and Captain Mutiny in it, and I was like, yeah, they didn't want to use this because it's kind of goofy looking, a little bit too far, very basic, and it's like they're trying to do space theme. But when they came up with the Stingwinger, Scorpius, Trakina, then you have the Villamax, Kegler, and Deviat stuff that came out of nowhere, because I'm a fan of Deviat. A lot of people don't care about Deviat, but I love that character. He's really, to me, I really wish he had come back. It's just really sad that Peppenbrook has now passed away. He did a really great voice for a lot of characters, not just Deviat. He did a lot of different characters. I was really shocked that, like, wow, they actually, torturing the Rangers when Deviat, took their mind control in order to power the Zords. He enslaved Zords that were once alive. I mean, I loved the TerraVenture Dome stuff. I thought that was very interesting. I was like, ooh, Star Trek-like stuff. Flying through space. Damon's still my favorite character with Kai. Kai and Damon, when they had that episode where they were being used to power up the Zords, that's the reason why I love Lost Galaxy so much. And then you had Mike almost die. Yes, it has the whole issue with, breathing in space and there's no problem. And they had that alien episode which came out of nowhere, and I was like, wow, they actually allowed this episode? This is very intense for a kid, which again is fine. I thought that was like good. It's like, oh, so you can push the show pretty far and it's it's still good. It's still PR. And it was like, and then you had the season finale, which was perfect. It's just like Trakina and Deviant get merged. Just till this day, you still don't know who had the most control. That ending to me, I thought was virtually perfect. I mean, the only thing I really hated was Bulk and Professor Phenonymous stayed on for no reason. Write him out in a simple way, like Skull did. He just overslept and he got left on Earth. Fine. That's all they had to do. They just lost their tickets, whatnot, and they screwed up and they couldn't get aboard, and that would have been it. All right, Power Rangers Time Force. It's a lot of people's favorite season or the favorite season, and I have to agree with that. I can't put it in good because it's actually a little bit better than that, so I have to put it in awesome. Even though I would say it's the perfect example of when Power Rangers almost one-to-one copies the Japanese season, and I have no problem with that. Usually I do, because the stories, it's just like you could come up with something better, you can come up with something more original, but in Time Ranger's case and Time Force's case, time travel is fairly universal, and there was no reason for them not to do it. And also they fixed on a few things that I really actually liked more, especially when Wes's father was dying. That happened in the Time Ranger, but because they were like, all right, we're going to actually make him turn his ways and be like, you know what, this is stupid. My son is doing something great for this city. You know, Rancic, who was a great original villain with his daughter, which was not amazing, but she was fine. I didn't hate her. And then we had, of course, Vrax, which I think is the best villain out of all of them, even above Rancic, because it's just like, Rancic killed you, you turn into a robot just to have revenge. It's like, that's really sick. And they went pretty far, and then they kill him just like that, and it's like they didn't care. I thought that was really great, the way to show how Rancic has fallen from, but then he goes and kills this guy a second time. Didn't even care and have no remorse until that moment where he almost killed his daughter. That's how you push the show, and that's really why people love it. It's also because of the Jen West dynamic, which was fine. I really didn't care for that type of dynamic. It's just, you know, it's kind of your standard PR, Pink Ranger, Red Ranger, love story. They usually do that type of thing a lot of times. So it's not like I hated it or anything, but it's just like the payoff was kind of stupid. They should have kissed at the end. I agree on that. The only negatives that I can say that really don't affect Time Force is Lucas, Katie, and Trip being vastly ignored, which is unfortunate. But again, because the characters were very different, they got dropped because they didn't follow any of the materials. I wish they had got something to do, but they are the only blights on this overall good stuff. Even Eric, I'm glad he went from I hate you because he had personal reasons. It wasn't like I just hate you because, oh, you're the Red Ranger and I wanted to be the Red Ranger. No, he had his personal reasons because of life screwed him, and he took it out on people, which was wrong, but then he learned his lesson. And then eventually Wes understood why he did that. In a way, it was Wes kind of echoing his father, like, I don't understand why you hate me. And then when he realized it, and then when Eric realized, Wes was actually the good guy. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. Wow, they really actually improved on the Time Ranger episode. The problem is because Naoto had died in Time Ranger, they couldn't explore any, like, you know, forgiving each other and getting that resolution except with his death. It's just like, we could have done a little bit more. You know, after Tommy, the Six Rangers kind of just kept getting further and further away, ignored. Like, Zane got removed for several times. Ryan got removed from a good chunk too. It was just, I like Six Rangers. RPM, it's a divisive season. Even though I love it and I consider it an awesome season, you know, people hate it because it's a very, very different departure from standard PR. I understand why people don't like it. It removes a lot of the comedy elements from PR, but it's not completely gone because we have Ziggy. Ziggy is PR's core comedy parts, which I thought was really good. And because of the whole world ending, it was the first time the show isolated this universe from the earlier seasons, so they couldn't really interact. I thought every character was well. From the secondary characters like Scott's father, which was really interesting. Even the goofy ones, we have, of course, Ziggy. Dylan's story, which again, some people complain, it's just a copy of Astronema and Andros' story. Yeah, valid. Not saying no. They did it fine. I didn't have a problem with it. But what they did with, because again, Dylan is completely different from Go On Black, completely. There was no material they used, but they came up with a story and they paid it off. Same thing with Tanaya 7. Kegalicia is a completely different character, no material used, and they came up with some interesting story. We had Gem and Gemma, who are complete opposites of Go On Gold and Silver, and it worked well because they're borderline insane. They love blowing stuff up, and it points out some of the psychological damage that they got because they were captured and or because they were in this, you know, secret organization. And that's why I also love Dr. K. They're all linked together, and I was like, wow, these people got kind of messed up. And they, you know, it's subtle. It's not like it's in your face, and it's not like it's going overboard so kids will be like weirded out. But it's there, and it has subtext. And RPM had a really great season finale. It's a completely original finale, which I thought, oh, that's great. You know, I always love it when they usually do, you know, original finales because, again, it focuses on the core elements. It subverted our expectations well because even though the original three Rangers didn't finish off Avengix, technically they didn't finish them off, Gem and Gemma did it, and they deserved it. because they were the ones who were really affected. And Dr. K got her moment when she's like, you know what? My friends are not dead. They're in the morphine grid. I'm going to reverse what you did and bring them back. Dylan got his payoff, and the other Rangers bought them enough time to pull everything off and finish off Vengeance. That's the reason why I loved RPM so much, especially when the season is completely goofy from Go Under material. And they even use some of the elements from this because of Dr. K being so isolated and not really having a perfect personality where she's like, am I an adult? Am I a kid? It gets reflected into the Zords, and that's like, it's a perfectly reasonable explanation. The only episode that I actually hate is the end action episode that was the behind the scenes thing, which they should have just framed it as a bonus feature. I'm going to put SPD as good. It's not awesome, but it's good because I love all the characters. I think besides Time Force and mmpr, SPD has a really great cast. Those are the 3 casts that I love the most. Now, Beast Morphers, they might join if nothing goes wrong with the entire season. It has flaws. I didn't like that they had this section where they started copying the Deca Ranger and they were falling into that routine of, let's just copy the Super Sentai material. Luckily, they pulled away from it near the end. The beginning is perfect because, again, we are building from these characters who were homeless. They were trying to be heroic, but then they were still being criminals because they were doing a whole Robin Hood thing. Jack was picked as a Red Ranger in order to get Sky to not think the way he thought, which was great because it's like, yeah, some people are going to be like, I deserve to be the leader, and because of that action, they're not qualified. It's the same thing with Devin. He didn't care that he was the leader or not, while the other 2 were trying to fight over it, and it's just like, no, Devin should get it because he didn't care. That's usually the best one because they're the most balanced. Everyone loves Bridge. I love Bridge with his buttery stuff and all this stuff. He hits the perfect comedy bits and serious bits when he needs to, and that's what unfortunately Dax didn't do. No problems with any of the other characters. The mystery with the evil A Squad, I thought that was a really cool idea, and they paid it off decently well. I mean, there were some restrictions because, again, you can't spend a lot of money. Doggy Kruger, I wish they had done more, but he was fine. They gave the Icinia a payoff, especially when they had no money to do aliens. Rum and final original fight at CGI fight, I thought was really good. It's like, okay, you gave the 6th Ranger something to do. The 6th Ranger is the weakest link. He was a ball of light. Great. So we have a ball of light. It doesn't do much. Cat, the only thing I could say is that I wish she had gotten more time to be Cat Ranger. I think that's the only negative I have of Cat because I thought she was a very good replacement for Deca Swan in the Deca Ranger. She was her own character, but filled into what she needed to do. Boom, no problem. Side character, goofy character, screws up, and it had that one episode as Orange Ranger. Really well done. Super Samurai. Oh, Super Samurai. Unfortunately, you're going to join your first season in his trash. Exception for Lauren, Antonio got nothing to really do. He unlocked the black box Morpher, which is still a bad name, by the way. And it was just like nothing improved. We got the Battleizer armor, and they don't do anything with it. It's just like, why do you make these things and not use them? The villains don't really get any type of good payoff. Yes, okay, with the Decker and Dayu story, there was something there, but because they changed it from the Japanese version, it really lost a lot of its flair, and I really didn't care for Decker's character, but he really did not encapsulate what they did in the Shinkenger episode. Because it's a copy of the Shinkenger stories, with very little originality, and because it's sticking so Japanese, but then when they get scared of it's being too Japanese, the characters just don't get anything good. Bulk and Spike are so underutilized, which really ticked me off. It's just like you could have redeemed them by using them through this season, and they didn't. It's just like they should not have been there. Yes, seeing Skull in the finale of the season was nice. I was glad we got something. He's rich somehow. I'm like, okay, fine. It's just they're throwaway characters. It's like, oh, you remember your childhood? Here, like our season. That's what it felt like. The substance of Power Rangers is there on screen. We have the suits, we have the characters, the archetypes, the villains. You don't have the story that's fun, compelling, interesting, and it's just like, here's Shinkenger, we're late, we can't really do anything. Oh, it's Japanese material. I'm sorry, we have to change this and then not explain it. That's what it felt like. And it's like, Lauren was the best thing. Even though she's very similar to what happened in Shinkenger, I had a problem with Kaoru and Shinkenger, she was very, very harsh, and Tanba really didn't help the situation either. And they had no problem using the original Shoto phone brush in the Morpher, which I still to this day I don't understand why they ignored that. It's like we had to have a laser thing, and it didn't make any sense why they did it like that. It was just so awkward when they drew the symbols, but then opened. Zio. Zio's fine. It's good. I won't put it in meh, even though, you know, I had its issues. I really got annoyed with Billy not being the Gold Ranger. I thought that was very poor taste. Because, again, I understand it. Zio was losing, you know, ratings. They needed a ratings boost, so they hired Austin St. John back. If you were going to do that, why bother having Billy? Billy should have just left and been written out with a really interesting episode. Well, you know, he became an adult, and he tried to save the power coins. You know, he failed. Everyone, you know, thought it was a great job. He should have just left there, and that would have been it. And I would have been totally fine if he had just simply departed the show there. I mean, Aisha disappeared between seasons. She really didn't get anything, and her younger version got, you know, to get the send-off, which I thought was really poor. The characters were improving because with season 3, a lot of them were getting very ignored. Aisha, Rocky especially, because he kind of got shafted because he wasn't the Red Ranger, a leader anymore. And Rocky finally got something to do. We had the whole, you know, tray of Trayphoria. You had this whole weird thing with Jason losing the powers. That was pretty cool. Again, a lot of people complained about the whole backstory with Tommy and his brother being Native Americans. And I was like, okay, it's different. I just wish they explored it more. The Machine Emperor I thought was fine. Some problems because, again, they're dealing with the Japanese footage, so they can't use much. The thing with Rita and Zed still being there, which I thought they should have just been written out or killed off too. But it was an improvement. Kat coming in, you know, Kat being in her second year, I thought great. Tanya, even though I hated that Aisha got, you know, kicked out, Tanya was a good replacement, and she did get some focus episodes in the beginning. I wish she had gotten more. I mean, at least she had that link with Jason, so that was great. Ernie, at least this was the final season of Ernie, and they gave him some nice stuff to do. At least they had him do that whole Hawaii stuff. We had that, you know, that part with Tommy and the potential new girlfriend and the cat thing. I just wished I had gotten stuff to do besides that, because that just didn't go anywhere. It was an improvement over season 3 because season 3 lost its way. Once they got through majority of the footage and they switched over to Alien Rangers, it's just like, this show, you don't know what you're doing. You wanna continue adapting the Japanese footage, but you didn't want to go away from the mmpr suits. So this was constantly causing you problems. And so when Zio came, like it's a fresh start. I didn't hate Tommy anymore. I was like, okay, he's red. This is what he should have been, not the 6th Ranger. Adam became a second in command, which I like that. But they did some fun episodes, like the Egyptian episode. They tried to tie in all those elements from O Ranger, which, you know, worked, and then some didn't work. I did like the Christmas episode with season greetings and that whole, you know, future thing. It's like, I didn't care. It wasn't the fact that I didn't, like, oh, Tommy and Kat shouldn't get married. No, I had no problem with that. Fine that they're married in Ninja Steel. Don't have a problem with that. Certain things didn't work out, and it didn't line up to what we have today. So again, it's a poor future season because of that. Of course, I left last mmpr. Season 1, I will consider as a good season. It was the very first season. It really had no direction to go. It was coming off of a very odd Japanese season. Yeah, I like Jew Ranger, but it's very different from what came before and what came after. Characters were not explored that well, but because of mmpr lasting for 3 years, that really, you know, rectified that problem. But I thought for standalone episodes and for being the very first PR season, you can forgive a lot of its problems. And a lot of the episodes they pulled off really well. I still think the intended original finale, they were the best season 1 episodes done by far. The next 20 episodes they added on to season 1 to make 60 episodes, they weren't great. They were reusing footage. The Pudgy Pig episode, I really don't like at all. All the characters were used fairly well. You know, every single one got something to do of some of their core archetypes, and Billy was the best thing, I think, out of the entire season. He started out as this nerdy, geeky character, but he was like, no, I don't want to just be like this. I don't want to feel intimidated by people. I don't want to feel ostracized. I don't want to feel weird. I want to be me, but I want to have confidence. So over the season, he got better and better and better. And it was just helped by Jason, you know, learning martial arts, building that character up, and all the characters helping him. They understood that he was a little awkward, but they didn't care, even though it's very simplistic to today's standards. It works even till today. Trini, I really wish she had stayed on for 2 more years. All the characters I wish they did. I think they were a very perfect family of characters, which could have been expanded on if they had stayed all 3 years. Even Rita Repulsa, the villains of the characters, Squat and Babu, Finster, Scorpina, I had no problems with none of them. Yes, Squat and Babu are very goofballs, which again, goofballs, but they don't interfere with main stories and characters. And Babu got some decent episodes because they were like, oh, okay, his character's actually kind of more menacing in the Jew Ranger footage. They used it. It didn't break character. Babu, he fills his role. He doesn't get that much to do, but because some characters just like that. I have no problem with characters who are just simplistic, and that's all they really do. Scorpina, I really wish she had done a lot more, but for the first season, she served her purpose. She was very menacing. I just didn't care for her monster form. I really wish the actress was actually in the fights, because I prefer having a connection with the character that's like physically there. If they're a monster and they're just a monster in a suit, but she was humanoid. Goldar, first season, perfect. Goldar and Zio, horrible. Rita, really great first villain. Rita, I loved her to come back in some capacity, villain or hero. I really wouldn't care. It would be interesting if she came back as someone that was good, because she did turn good at the end of Space, and it's just like, that'd be interesting if she would actually be the mentor for one season. I always thought of that. Now, season 2. And it's not just because the trio had left. It's their key thing. But I did like Aisha, Adam, and Rocky. They filled those shoes in. I mean, it must have been very difficult for the actors. They're being thrown all around. They had a movie. I love the Thunderzords. I liked all the material that came from Die Ranger, because they were so afraid of switching the suits, because the suits were the brand, even though the Power Rangers was the brand itself. I think they could have survived and changed the suits, because it would have opened up the season to more footage. That's really what it wasn't, because I love the Japanese suits. You can't, like, I have to see them. You have to use them. It's not like that. If they don't use a suit, I don't have a problem with that. Some people do. They really wanted to see Die Rangers because it was in the Sentai. You should use it. It's just, no, I wanted them to use it for a practical reason, because you could have used the footage. That was it. You wouldn't have to have been stuck in a park. You wouldn't have to write episodes in very awkward ways because you were like, this monster does this, but they can't interact with it. Then you had the whole Jew 2.0 footage, that because they filmed all the Zord stuff for us, they were forced to use it for 10 or 15 more episodes. Very awkward fights. You could see where it's edited poorly. Even when I was a kid, that was always a major problem because of these sequential problems. But the ultimate thing is when Tommy was like, here's the new leader of the Power Rangers. And I was like, oh, Tommy, I like you, but you goofed Rocky out of position. And the show was Tommy, God, Jesus, whatever you want to call him. So it just kept getting more annoying for me. By the time season 2 finished, I was just over it. So season 2 would be in meh. And season 3 will also be in meh. They're not trash. I also count Alien Rangers in with season 3. I don't like separating them. Season 3 is the worst of MMPR for me. The status quo stayed. Tommy was the leader. It was just because of all the stuff that had happened in season 2, and the Masked Rider stuff really didn't help. I was not even a fan of Masked Rider. Love VR Troopers. Love Beetleborgs. Masked Rider? No. So we had that, and that started off the season. That was already bad. I love the season, the actual season opener with the Thunderzords being destroyed. You know, having an emotional attachment to the Zords helps. Amy Jo is a really good actress when she, in that particular moment when she screams, because that's what you should do. I wish more seasons had done that. But after they had gotten the Ninja Zords and they fell into the, the standard PR formula of doing these things, I started getting, more knowledgeable of, issues between, the Japanese footage and the US footage. At this point, I knew the show was something foreign. So when I saw season 3 the most, I was like, something's going on here, and they're cutting around something, and there's awkward episodes. There's some fun episodes, I'm not saying no. And then they brought in Master Vile and Rito Revolto. I thought these characters were great. I really wish Rito had continued in this direction instead of getting worse. But then after they had gotten rid of all of that footage, Rita and Lord Zed really just kind of devolving into this sitcom personality, which again, it's okay to have that as bits and pieces, but since that became the main thing, did this stem from the MMPR movie? Because Ivan Ooze's character was kind of in a similar way, because he always made kind of Brady Bunch references and stuff. So it's kind of like, did they get that from there? They're failing, they're whining and complaining. I think it's a combination of, doing this for 3 years. And then finally, when we get something new, they're turned to kids, which, okay, that had happened in the past, but they didn't really do anything with it. It's just they were stuck as kids. The world had turned back in time to the 80s, And I was like, that's it? And then the Alien Rangers come in, Power Rangers on another planet. That's cool. And I thought, oh, okay, we'll know them better. They didn't get to know no one except for White and Blue. We finally got some new characters. They do nothing with them. And then because they had to start setting up Zeo, we had this whole arc of finding the Zeo crystals. And the worst thing that I hated about Season 3 was the nonchalant nature of the power coins being destroyed. These powers had survived, more or less. Yes, I know technically they're new coins for Season 3 because the Season 2 and 1 coins were damaged, but they still technically function. It's just that they were like, you know, Billy tried to use them, and then Goldar and took them, Rita and everyone destroyed them, and because they were kids, it's just like, I didn't really care anymore. If I don't care that their powers are gone, it's like that's the starting point where I'm like, I'm not really caring about the show. In a way, this is the reason why them rotating the cast every year was a godsend, but in other ways, it sucks because when you land onto a season that's really good, you would love another season with them. Personally, currently, Beast Morphers, I will say it's a very good season, and I would love them to keep them going for more than just 2 years. But then there are other times where, unfortunately, a season is poor, and I really don't want to see them again. Kim left. Kim departed. That was a really huge blow to a lot of people. It's not like Kat was like taking the space over and kicking Kim out. No. Amy Jo Johnson wanted to leave and move on. I totally respect and understand that. I don't have a problem if a character dies or if a character moves on, as long as you give them a proper send-off that feels worthwhile. And Kim was the only one that ever did. Whenever someone left, from that point forward, it was rushed, and when they did get a send-off, like Kendrick's, she came back to life and was perfectly fine. And I like, that robs of the death scene. With all those issues with Season 3, and of course, Attack of the 50-Foot Bulk, those weird episodes, but overall, that is the reason why Seasons 2 and 3 are meh. Now, I've been mentioning Beast Morphers. I will not rate them right now because it's not finished. Once Beast Morphers finish, I will rate them properly in a future video. What do you guys think of this type of video? There was no script. I'm just talking about each of the episodes. It really didn't fit into any type of format, so I was like, oh, let me just do it like this. Would you like me to continue doing something like this with a different type of topic that can't be condensed into a top 10? Thanks again. I hope I answered a lot of your questions. Oh, and mmpr reversion is trash. If you like my content, consider subscribing and leaving a like. Sorry about not including stills in the video. Due to past fair use abuses from the various companies involved, I no longer feature them. Thank you for understanding. See you in the next video.